All right, let's call the meeting to order at 7:04. The roll call, we have three members of the board who are, well, two members who are absent tonight, Rich Bailey and Lee Langdon, and Sarah Holmstrom is on with us on the phone.
Andrew.
Oh, Andrew's not here either.
No.
Okay,
He had mentioned that he was going to be slightly late.
okay, yeah, he will be about 10 minutes late. Okay, adoption of the agenda. I'm going to make a suggestion that we move the resolution for corporate borrowing up in front so that we can do that, get that finalized, and then we will have the rest of the meeting to address the budget questions and anything that the board would like to see in that.
Agreed.
Okay, with no objection, let's adopt the agenda as amended by acclamation. All right, announcements? Joe?
Yes, I'd like to introduce Melinda Stump. She is our new financial manager, with Jennifer resigning and starting her own business. So, Board of Directors, this is Melinda.
Hi, Melinda.
Hi, Melinda. Anything else?
Yeah, can I say something?
Sure, if you got an announcement, go right ahead. Move into the microphone, you're good.
It's not really an announcement, but I want to say, I know this will embarrass you, I'm very sorry.
No, you're not.
No, because she deserves what I'm about to say.
If you ever get to say it.
Yeah, it's we've been blessed to have you here. You have pulled our bacon out of the fire so many times, and you have done so with such grace and skill, and at great personal effort on your part, hours and hours and hours that I don't even know about, not to mention the ones I do know about. I consider it a true honor to have been able to work with you and to have known you. And I'm going to miss the bloody devil out of your contribution to this community.
All right, so let's move right now into the new business and the corporate borrowing resolution. And I guess you're on to explain what this is.
Great. So as you all know, we switched payroll providers in January, and that payroll provider requires that they get paid in advance before they pay our employees. That way, they're not left holding the bag if a company can't pay them. And so we have been processing payroll, but it's been through a wire transfer, and that means that every time payroll is run, I have to speak with someone at the bank. You can't send an email authorization. The bank has to call, or I have to call, and we have to connect. And if that, it's always happened, but if it wasn't to happen, payroll wouldn't get run. For example, one week our banker was on vacation, and the person who was filling in didn't know that they could also speak with one of the other people in our accounting department. Therefore, if I had been on vacation, payroll wouldn't have been processed and our employees wouldn't have been paid. So this solves that. It's a letter of credit. It's just, it's money that we're still holding. It's secured against our emergency operating funds. It just says that if Sudden Valley, for whatever reason, didn't have sufficient funds to pay payroll, which would not happen, then they could draw on this $100,000. That's all. It's still our money, still in our bank account. It's earning interest. There's no net cost to Sudden Valley.
Questions? Carol?
I'd like to make a motion so we can discuss it. I'd move that we accept the resolution as written and presented to us in our packet.
Second.
Okay, and we have a
Sorry,
second.
let him
All
know.
right, questions now, comments? Eric?
So this line of credit has no overhead fees, no establishing the line of credit fees?
Microphone?
Yeah, it's actually not even a line of credit. It's called a letter of credit. It's even it's less than a line of credit because we're not expected to draw off of it. There is a small fee to set it up, but that fee is more than offset by the interest that we're earning by having those funds in a CD. So the net cost, there's no net cost.
Thanks.
Okay. One question I had, I'm looking down here at the security section, and it is secured by property. This is common property, right?
It's secured by $100,000 cash that's in our emergency operating funds in a CD. That's the property it's referred to. That's Sudden Valley Community Association property.
Right, so the association property, it has nothing to do with the members here, their property. It will not be affected at all.
That's correct.
Okay. Eric?
Just a point of information, if that were to be the case, then each member's deeds would be recorded with that.
If that were the case, that would
Yes,
be
and
probably true.
that's
yeah.
not even a legal
But it isn't, so,
thing to
never mind,
happen,
okay.
so.
Larry?
Yeah, just clarifying, it uses the word property, but it does not mean physical property of any kind.
It's $100,000 cash in a CD. That is what it is secured against. That is the property that's referring to.
Very good. Anything else might be very difficult procedurally.
Right.
So this, not difficult at all.
Further questions,
I have questions.
comments?
Call the question.
I have questions.
Oh, sorry.
Sarah?
I can't hear.
Am I up?
You're
Can you
up.
guys hear me? Okay. Okay, so in reading through a lot of the specifics on the actual document, it's a lot more broad than what it sounds like specifically we're trying to do for this. My first question is, why can't they do ACHs?
So the payroll company is going to do an ACH, but in order for the payroll company to do an ACH, they need this letter of credit because they need to be assured that they're going to be paid in advance. And so we process payroll on Wednesday by noon for a Sunday close. For the amount of time it takes to process payroll, release the funds, pay the employees, get the money to the payroll company, that would take about 4.5 days, and our employees get paid on Friday. So we are doing this so we can do an ACH and not have the wire transfer, which requires that verbal authorization. And what if we were closed for snow and no one was here at the association to answer the phone? Our employees wouldn't get paid. And that's a big problem. I don't want to have that block to getting our employees paid.
Okay, I guess my comment to that is we don't have bad credit. There's no reason they should need this letter of credit against us to do that. And it's also not a common thing for a payroll provider to require. Based on the terms of this, which I'll talk to in a second, I would highly encourage us to not move forward with this and go to a payroll provider that can just do a normal ACH without requiring this. Looking at the actions authorized under the actual resolution, it's very broad, and it's all giving power for one person to do anything. So it says any one of the authorized person, which is Leslie and Carol, may enter into any of these agreements, borrow money for any amount that they deem necessary or reasonable, execute notes, modifications, refinancing, consolidation, substitution of one of the notes, grant. This is basically an open line, giving authority to one person, if we sign this, to do all those things. There's nothing in here that says the board has to approve it. There's nothing in here that says the association has any say. There's nothing in here that says this is only going to be $100,000. It just says for any amount that they deem necessary.
It actually, point of information, it actually says $100,000 right at the top. And our bylaws already allow two board members to sign for any kind of loan. And unfortunately, the bank just required that we actually have a resolution adopted by the board, which is in that second paragraph. But our bylaws allow two governing officers to take out a loan.
Okay, but I'm not comfortable with this allowing them to modify it, which it absolutely does, and it allows one person to do it. Word for word, that's what it says.
Okay. Larry?
The document that we have in front of us simply says that the executives named have the authority to do that. It does not say that those things would be done without board authorization. State law gives, as well as our bylaws, gives the appropriate executives the authority to do these kinds of things because they go along with directing and handling a business. To the extent that the actual execution of that signature is required, that probably would take a board authorization, unless there was some emergency that required doing this without the ability to get board authorization, in which case it would revert to executive committee authorization. And if that was still unavoidable, then it would divert directly to the board president. None of this is unusual in any regard, and I don't think that it opens up the board to any undue behavior on the part of either of the executives named.
Further comments? Carol?
I still have more too.
I didn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry, I didn't
She
hear.
wants to speak again.
Uh,
Carol first.
Yeah.
Okay. Question, have we had our attorney review this?
Yes, our attorney has reviewed this, and there are actually several other pages that go with this document, including one with the payroll provider for them to have on file saying that it's only in the event that Sudden Valley does not have sufficient funds to cover payroll that the $100,000 would be drawn upon. The bank required this corporate borrowing resolution and that the board vote on that.
Okay, I'm
What's
comfortable
presented.
if Mr. Davis has approved the documents and the attached documents, I'm comfortable with this. I certainly have no intention of committing the association to anything other than what I'm allowed to, so that's great.
Any other comments?
Madam President, Sarah still
It's what?
has some questions.
Okay.
Sarah?
Okay, so another piece of this, I guess, it doesn't say anything in here about what about if Carol or Leslie aren't in those positions? It just references them specifically. I don't see that addressed, but I guess if there's more pages that we haven't seen, it could address it in those, but nothing that we were given shows that.
So the corporate borrowing resolution is adopted by the board members that are present, just like our $1.625 million loan. That was signed by the board members who were the board president and treasurer at that time, so similar to this document. Our bylaws
I'm not-
require those officers to sign.
I'm not as concerned with the actual resolution itself. It's the actual bank document that I'm really concerned with. The grant security department of that, section of that, like we were talking about that it's only the 100,000, but this says to mortgage, pledge, transfer, or otherwise encumber and deliver to lender any property now or hereafter belonging to the corporation, of which we have an interest. That says nothing about it's limited to the 100,000. That says all of our property, without limitation to the corporation's real property and all of the corporation's personal property as security for the payment of the loan.
Our attorney has reviewed these documents and is in concurrence that it's just the $100,000 CD that's set aside. I'm not an attorney.
I'm not an attorney either, but I can read what the print says, and it doesn't limit that whatsoever. I mean, did somebody ask the attorney? Did we go back and forth and modify these documents? I mean, I know you can with the bank. I'm just not, this is really, really vague. It's an open check, it's an open book, and I'm not saying, I know, Carol, you said, you're not going to do anything unreasonable, and I'm not saying you would, but I'm saying this, the way it's written, allows it to happen. It allows one person to borrow more money or execute more notes, and it also encumbers all of our property, not just $100,000 sitting in a specific account. The grant security section should say they have that they can mortgage or pledge or transfer that 100,000 in our emergency operation funds. It shouldn't say all of our property now and hereafter.
Madam President Whitney?
Whitney? Yeah.
Didn't you say it was going to be held in a CD?
It is held in a CD, a Sudden Valley Community Association CD. That's what it's secured against. Our attorney has reviewed all the documentation and agrees that is the only thing that is being secured for the purpose of drawing down payroll should Sudden Valley not have sufficient funds.
So technically, a CD can't be withdrawn. It's in the CD for 12 months?
For 12 months.
So it's basically untouchable for the amount of time that we have it in this year. Is that correct?
I mean, unless Sudden Valley didn't have sufficient funds, which wouldn't happen, then there would be a
But
penalty.
I'm saying untouchable by Leslie or Carol, like.
Oh, yeah.
It's in a
yes,
CD.
It's in a CD. It's
not
locked in
gonna
there.
be available to anyone.
But the rest of the documentation, as I said, reviewed by the attorney, shows that it's only for the purpose of the payroll company drawing down should Sudden Valley not have sufficient funds to fund payroll.
Thank you.
Madam President, Eric?
Eric?
I'd like to point out a fact that just because a bank or any other vendor, for that matter, says that we can do something within their guidelines, within their rules, within their contracts, it doesn't mean that we, as a corporation, or certainly as a board, have the ability to do things their way. We have to do things the way that our bylaws and state law require. And certainly, not one officer would be able to, according to our bylaws or state law, would be able to do what that contract is suggesting. And so there's there's the stopping point right there. It's vendors are very much open to doing business with people on whatever terms we can give them, but we don't have those terms. And so just because that contract says they have the ability to do that, doesn't mean that we have the ability to do that. So it's a non-issue to me.
Question, after the election in November and after we have election of officers, would this document be re-signed then by the upcoming president and treasurer?
And the board?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. I would hope that, I'm not permanently on the hook. And I think it ought to flow through to the current president and treasurer ought to be re-signing that document.
I'm sure we can request to have that re-signed.
Okay.
Madam
Larry?
President, Larry?
Point of information, on page 3, it says further acts. In the case of lines of credit, to designate additional or alternate individuals as being authorized to request advances, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it already covers that. It
Okay.
just basically means that the current signatories have to notify the proper
That there
authorities.
has been a change of officer, whatever.
That there
yeah,
has
right.
been a change, and from this, it doesn't even necessarily require a new signature, but I think that would be prudent.
Okay. Anyone
Madam
else?
President, that's it. Call the question.
If there are no further questions or comments, let's call the question. All those in favor? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Sarah, please.
All those
I'm
opposed?
against.
Against.
Yes. Okay. So we have 7 in favor and 1 opposed. The motion passes. All right, so we'll move on to the budget discussion. Do I have a motion, Eric?
Madam President, I would move that we enter into a committee of the whole session where we would be able to ask unlimited questions and have no ability to make motions other than get out of the committee of the whole.
Second?
Second.
Okay, there's a second. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous. All right, so let's kind of go at this by having each of you or anyone who would like to wish to discuss a portion of this document and anything that you would like clarified or changed or just kind of, Mike?
Madam President, on page 38, item 6165, I make a motion that the
Okay,
hazardous...
we are not making motions at this time. This is for discussion only, okay? But that's all right, page 38. Let's get to page 38 first. And that would be the ACC and security. What is your suggestion?
At 6165, down at the bottom, hazardous tree removal, pruning. I would
Yes.
like to increase that from 20,000 to 60,000.
Discussion. Larry?
Makes absolute sense to me. We've been spending a lot on trees. Trees are continuing to be diseased. Sorry, the microphone is not close to me, so I'm yelling. The trees continue to be diseased. The sick ones haven't gotten any better, and new ones are getting sick all the time. It's just an expense that is waiting to happen. And I think it would be prudent for the community to do as suggested, which is not rely on UDR for expenses like this that come up in the future. It's about time we start budgeting on the basis of what we know we're going to need to do, as opposed to what we hope we can avoid somehow, and if the good tooth fairy waves the wand.
Is there anybody who would like to speak against this suggestion? Hearing none, let us consider adding the extra $40,000 into that security for hazardous trees line and see what that does.
For the information of the audience, that would be an increase of about $1.20.
So I also increased the expected pool income to $7,500 based on the last meeting, and that's reflected in what's presented up on the screen there. So if we do the pool income to $7,500 and increase hazardous trees by another $40,000, then that would make the developed lot dues monthly $61.74.
Okay. Now, which line are we on? Could you put the cursor where you're,
So I'm reading right here on that line,
Can you give
6174.
page numbers, because I can't see the screen?
She said, can you read the numbers, because she can't
No,
see
the
them.
page number. She wants to know the page number.
is that a page in our book?
No.
No, this is a
This is just
spreadsheet to
a-
make
okay.
live changes, so it's not a page in your book.
Okay.
Can you focus that a little better?
Yeah, it's even with my glasses, it's a little hazy.
I'm not sure what we're saying.
Are we too close to it?
That's a little better.
It's not a high resolution thing. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that was. So explain the 1740, that's.
Microphone?
Oh, can you explain the 1740, what that means exactly? In other words, Mike just said that means another $1.20 a month per lot. This is 1740, what is
What is 1740?
Is that the annual?
Ops monthly, that's,
That's 61.
oh, 61,740. Sorry, it looked like it was a dollar sign in front of it. I'm not reading it well.
So if it goes up to $61.74 if you also increase pool income to the $7,500. So
What was it previously?
What was the monthly increase with that? Just, was it $1.05, $1.10, whatever it comes to?
$1.20 for this.
so it was $60.57.
That was 3, so 3 threes is 9, so it'd be $1.11. About $1.11.
It's $1.17.
Increase of $1.17 total.
Per month.
Per per,
per developed lot.
So we got there because we increased the revenue of the big pool from 45 to 75?
Well, I have to make it a little smaller on my screen. I'll pull it up here, okay?
Or was it 46? 46 to 75?
believe it was
She's getting the number.
49?
49 to 75.
It's a $2,600 increase in pool income
Okay.
annually.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Is there general consensus that we would like to add this to the budget? I'm not hearing anybody objecting to it, so I will suggest that we do add the additional hazardous tree monies to the budget. Does anybody else have any comments, suggestions, or changes that you would like to make? Larry?
I don't have a specific amount in the top of my head right now, but I think it is absolutely irresponsible. I'll use that word. I know it's strong, but I mean it sincerely, to not have additional funding for surf and roads in this budget. We are looking at, my recollection was going into the red very soon down the road, and we've already decided to postpone some work from next year, in part to test the new surface on the roads, although I'm not sure that's terribly necessary, at least based on an expert in the field who's talked to me about that material. At least the secondary reason was to reduce expenditures. We know we're going to have to spend that money. And we know if we postpone funding those amounts, it just means that if we postpone it this year, it just means that we're going to have even more to catch up next year. And every year that stuff gets postponed, if we're going to do the work at all, it just means a bigger increase that year. And so I wholeheartedly recommend that we add more to surf and roads. I would suggest that the overall dues amount come to somewhere like $175, with that entire extra amount put into roads and surf, because we desperately need roads and surf. And probably the majority of it being put into roads because so many people in the community have said for years that roads are so very, very, very important. Well, okay, let's start paying for them.
Jennifer, did we add something to the roads fund this year? I believe that there was an increase in roads. Carol?
Yes.
if you look at page number 6 in your packet, you will note that under surf, there was a recommendation of $8.31 increase for surf, and roads is $4.84. And I can appreciate Larry's concerns. This was debated quite heavily at the Finance Committee, and we looked at the burn rate each year of what was happening, and the Finance Committee felt that 831 and 484 were commensurate with the amount of work that needs to be done and for the amount that we needed for this coming year. Granted, there is a lot more to be done, but based on what is planned for this coming year, those are appropriate amounts, I believe, for the kind of capital work that is intended to be done in 2020.
Okay, yes, according to page 6, it does show that there is an increase in roads of $4.84 for next year, and an increase in surf for $8.31.
Just to clarify my point, I'm not talking about spending that money next year. I'm talking about funding
understand that.
the well-known future expenses.
Yeah. Does the Finance Committee have a plan to address surf?
Well, as I mentioned last week, one of the things that the Finance Committee has requested is that the board provide us with direction, or next year's Finance Committee, or who, we need to do it as soon as possible, direction as to what kind of a plan we should have going forward. Do we want to fund things over 5 years, over 10 years, over 20 years? Do we want to keep all of our assets? Are there assets we want to get rid of? I mean, the Finance Committee has been dealing with what we have for many years and doing the best they could, and we've already recommended the destruction of a couple of our assets and the refreshment of some of our assets. But they are feeling uncomfortable making those decisions because it's really a board's decision that needs to drive this. So we can come up with recommendations, but we really need to have a goal. What's the common goal? Where are we headed? What do we need to start to plan to fund for? And we think it needs to be a 20-year plan
Comments?
for moving forward.
Comments? Paula?
I'm just going to back up what you said on that, Carol. I think we absolutely...
Speak louder then.
Oh, sorry. I think, and again, the Finance Committee talked about this a lot, we do need a plan. And there's absolutely some huge things that are coming forward, but right now we're looking at 2020. We can't, it feels, I don't know that I would be as strong as irresponsible, but without having that plan to say that we want to go up to $175 in dues for a plan that we don't know what that's going to look like yet, I just think that we have to have a better idea of what that plan looks like before we say next year we're going to make that jump. Not that we're not going to get there or might get there, but without a plan, making that large of a jump in 1 year, not knowing what that looks like, not knowing what the board or the community has said is priority seems premature at this time.
Anybody else?
Madam President,
Andrew?
Andrew.
So, I mean, why don't we just instead not move forward and not have dues increases and come together through consensus?
Andrew, can you speak up a little
Can you
bit? I
get
can't hear
closer
you
to
at
the
all.
microphone?
Yeah, microphone
Yeah.
close.
Sorry, so I absolutely agree that we need a plan. A 20-year plan sounds really good. We all agree we need a plan. So why don't we postpone adoption of a proposed budget until we have a plan to communicate with the community? I mean, why would we move forward without having that direction?
Madam President Carroll.
Yeah, it's great to have a 20-year plan, but we've been putting a plan together. We have a 10-year roads plan that was provided to us by our engineers. We have deferred quite a few of the items on that roads plan to try to give us some breathing room as far as funds. But for instance, this year we're doing resurfacing, and as last week, I believe the general manager stated, we are postponing completion of that resurfacing until we have a chance to see what this version, the two that we're getting, or the two sections, I guess, or the two plans that we're getting done. We were supposed to do some resurfacing last year, and we're going to do more this year, having to do both of them this year. And we were supposed to do 2 more years worth, but we're holding off until we see how this does. We have a plan for roads already. We also have a plan for SURF every single year. So this year, we, pardon me, went through the SURF plan, looking at all of the recommendations from the reserve study, and the department managers and the finance committee went through the entire list to determine what are the most critical things that we could get done this year based on the amounts of funds that we have. And so we do have plans, but I think our concern is not for this coming year, but can we make it a longer term so we aren't doing this every year and just trying to make a one-year decision? Let's make a more strategic decision so that we can all have a better idea of what the future is going to hold. So I don't think we stop. There are too many things that need to be done. Roads need to be repaired. We've got potholes that just got fixed, and we need to resurface over those. And we have a lot of culverts that need repair that are part of our plan. And I don't think we should hold on those. I think we need to move forward. So I think it's great if we could have a 20-year plan, but I don't think we hold this year to wait for that.
Madam President, Paula.
And just to re-clarify on SURF, the only thing that we're doing in SURF next year with that 831 right now is planned to be items that were B items this year that were not done on a scale of A to F. So the Bs from this year and the As from this year. So we're not even, this increase doesn't touch the Bs or the Cs for next year either. And it doesn't touch the Cs from this year. So there's already quite a bit that's being put off in that. So I wouldn't recommend going any lower on SURF than what we're doing this year.
Madam President, Larry.
What I've heard simply reinforces my point. We already have a 10-year plan. We know what we need to do, and we know when we need to do it. That's been known for years already. We know we need to start saving. Otherwise, we're going to have to start paying in the year that we need it. If we don't start saving up for it in advance, we're going to pay for it the year that we need it. And what drove the community wild was seeing what would happen with the overall dues if we did that. It jumps enormously in a couple of years. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody can afford it. Why the devil would we put it off this year when we know we need to save for future years? That's the whole point of having a reserve fund. And it's been unfunded or underfunded for decades, particularly once we knew that we had culverts that had never been planned for. We had roadside vegetation management that had never been done, much less planned for. That increased the amount of money that we need for our road work dramatically, and we are seriously underfunded this year, and there is just no excuse for postponing that another year, other than, oh, it's a shock this year. Yeah, it's a shock this year. I guarantee the shock next year or the year after will be one heck of a lot more substantial.
Madam President.
Yes, I just wanted to speak actually just to the SURF right now. I think that we need to do a deeper dive into that SURF plan and look at what it is that, what we want to do and how we want to do it. In other words, do we want to just fund things and raise it every year, or do you want to identify which projects, which big projects you really want to do, pull them out of the reserve study as it exists right now, and fund them separately in a special assessment? Now, this is the answer that we don't know right now. And until September or so, we are so deep in the weeds on doing the 2020 budget that I don't think that we can give proper study to that question. And I would like to start in September sometime and start for the board to decide how do we want to fund these things going forward, and then give that charge to the Finance Committee to say, okay, if the board wants to do it this way, if we want to pull these projects out and do them separately with a special assessment, Finance Committee come back and tell us how we can do this most efficiently. As far as roads go, I think that we have a little bit of a breather room next year because we're waiting on the microsurfacing until we find out how that is going to be holding up from the roads that we do this year.
Madam President,
Joe?
General Manager.
Yeah.
If everyone can look up at the screen, and Jennifer can chime in if I get this wrong. In the Finance Committee, one of the things that we addressed was if we took out all the big projects, i.e. this building, maintenance building, clubhouse, all the major renovations, based off of the reserve study, is what we have up there, 2779. And if you see the additional assessments, that would be what it would cover to get all the stuff on the reserve studies funded minus your big projects. Correct, Jennifer?
That's correct. For future years, in 2020, we've deferred some of those costs from 2019 and 2020.
So if you look down to roads, you have the same thing. All the big projects have been pulled out. So you're at a base of 2779 plus those other assessments to do everything that is on your current reserve study other than your major projects. That was something the finance had requested, we pulled it out. So Larry, there is your baseline for everything. And that is on page, it is on page 7 of your workbooks. So there is your breakdown, everyone. So to Larry's point and to the board's point, you are, if we fund what we're showing right there, we're going to do nothing extra or anything, and you will not have a reserve study that is funded at the end of that. You will just be continually to put Band-Aids onto what you're doing. So at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the board to decide what they feel that number should be to build a reserve study at the end of 10 to 15 years, which would have an adequate amount of money to fund anything going forward. That will be up to you guys to decide, and it will be up, once that is decided, it will be up to myself and my team to manage that for you. But there's your work.
On average, that'd be $33.47 a month before you take out the, after taking out the big ticket items. And the big ticket items, just for point of information, that are included in the third special assessment line are listed at the bottom of page 114 of your packet, and include Barn 8 building remodel, Barn 8 spec design for rebuild, the clubhouse, Area Z maintenance building replacement, and then the east, and then the other 2 remaining spits at the marina.
Madam President Carroll.
It also does not include dredging.
It does not include dredging. The reserve study does not include
There was
dredging.
something, anything that we have not already done that could be in the future is not on the reserve study. So something that we may have planned for the future, such as dredging, would not be included in this. That would be a separate item that we'd have to consider at the time we decided to do it.
Larry?
Madam President, Larry.
And that is my point. Exactly. We're not funding things we know we're going to have to do. Now, sure, it can be done in a special assessment, and the longer we put that off, the bigger that assessment is going to have to be if we haven't been saving money today.
Eric?
So the way I'm understanding it is that if we didn't increase the SURF dues this coming year, then we would be going nowhere positive with our ability to do anything new this coming year for SURF for those A's and B's. And I know that the more funded the reserves are, the less likely a special assessment, as Jennifer talked about last week. And those percentages are high. If we get up to, what was it, 30% of our reserves funded, we're likely to need a special assessment at some point? Is that?
Need one.
Up to
Up to 30%, you will need a special assessment to go ahead and do any projects. Up to 50, 60%, I believe, is a possibility. Anything over 60, 70, in that range, you will not need one.
Right. And so right now, we're at
Zero.
zero. And so my feeling is that any positive impact that we can make in building up our reserves is going to be helpful. I don't see any realistic scenario this year of us getting the potential need for a special assessment anytime soon. And by soon, I mean in the next 5 years. But the better that we do in funding, I think that you said the average was $33 a month for SURF.
$33.50, and about $44 on average for roads if you take out the big projects.
And so for SURF, for example, if the average moving forward is 33, and that would be taking out the big projects, which of course the special assessments are the, what would be necessary at this point or at any point in the near future. Right now, we're proposing 36 for SURF. And so that's better than the average of the projections. So I think that we're moving in a positive direction there, slowly building up reserves or potential for reserves. But yeah, sure, I'd like to do that faster. But we have so many things that we have to balance here in the community. The needs are the dollars are being tugged in every direction, and building the reserves even slightly is a positive thing, I think.
Question?
Andrew?
I mean, I absolutely agree we need to focus on our critical infrastructure, maintaining our roads and SURF. I mean, absolutely, hands down. I'm struggling with increasing dues in addition to what's already been presented to account for that. Why wouldn't we consolidate internally and think of raising dues as like literally the last resort? I know there's been lots of conversations that, the finance committee, and I'm just not seeing that as, this is the final and last resort. I mean, we were told that this budget was based off of the manager's wish list of everything that they want. So the managers could go back and reorganize their budget to account for the increase in the SURF that Larry described in roads. And we just need to take a closer look at that, I think.
It's not a wish list. This was what it takes to run day-to-day operations, Andrew. It was not a wish list. The original plan was when it went to finance, that was the whole overview of what they would truly like, and finance cut it down to what it is now, to the bare minimum.
Well, I mean, this is really to the board. I mean, we need to consider this as maybe we need to take another deep dive internally, and maybe there's more things that are outside of SURF and roads that we can't, that unfortunately we wouldn't be able to do next year. I mean, I just think we should, I mean, if this budget as we were originally proposed goes through, I mean, I don't think we should add additional dollars to these dues. I mean, that, in addition to getting to this draft here, not this one, I think it should also be the last. I mean, I would think we would come as like, this is literally the last thing that we have to do is raise dues to the community, because this draft budget came out, and I'm still seeing up on here that we're going to be at like $300 in 2-year time, and over a 2-year time, and if we approve of this budget, it's going to go out to the community as this is the board's draft proposed dues increase in 2020 budget for, I understand, 2020, but without having that plan that we talked about. Some board members said we have a plan, and then we thought, well, maybe we do have a plan. So I don't think we're all fully unified on what that plan is. Some of us think we have a plan, and others don't. At the same time, we're about to send this draft proposed budget out to the community, when originally we said, don't look at those numbers, direct your questions back to the finance committee. That's not what the board decided, and I'm sitting here tonight with one, voice away from this being proposed to the membership, and that's where I get to. I think we need to have that discussion about what our long-term plan is first, so we can see that line get a little bit more even, and we can realize reasonable dues increases, not a spike to $396 at 2022.
Madam President Carroll.
Andrew, you're right. From the standpoint of what this looks like, this is not a plan. This is SURF. And all this shows you is the way SURF is designed, the way it is listing all of our assets right now, and understand that part of the spikes are because we have deferred so many items every year for so long that they get bunched up. It's sort of, we'd like to be able to spread it out over a longer period, but right now, because we've deferred so many things, they are kind of bunched up in the next 3 to 5 years. But the Finance Committee is saying, tell us what you want us to do with all this backlog. If we were to fix it in the timeline that is on the reserve study, that's the kind of numbers you would see. We are not recommending that. We don't want to see $300 or $400 a month in dues either. What we're looking for is a plan that says, spread this out, but tell us what's your order of fixing these things? What's your order of, this is something the Finance Committee, all they can do is deal with today, this year, what's coming up this year, or what's coming up for the future year. And I see what you're saying, that you'd like to have a longer-term plan. But for now, all we're doing is taking care of the most immediate needs based on what we have been meeting about over a longer period of time with the managers. This has been sort of a 3-month process to try to figure out the most important things that need to be done between now and the end of next year. So though we'd like to have a longer term plan, what we can't deal with right now is 21, 22, 23, 24, because I think those are unrealistic numbers. We know they are. But we've got to have that longer term plan, but we are never going to get it done in time for budget this year. And in the meantime, we have things that, I'll give you an example. We have some pieces of equipment that cost us so much money in repairs every year because they're 17 to 20 years old, that it's going to cost us more to continue to repair them than it is to replace them. And we need capital money to be able to replace them. If you talk to, I know Brian's not here and Jacob's not here, but a lot of our maintenance, for instance, Bruce as well, can tell you that many of our pieces of equipment are very old and are requiring a ton of money to repair. The irrigation system is another good example of that. And so these are the things we felt were necessary to get fixed this year, which is why the SURF items that were chosen are the ones that are being repaired, because they're going to cost us, to Larry's point, more in the end if we don't repair them now. But I don't think we can deal with a 20-year plan before this budget for this coming year, and I don't think we can wait to fix a lot of these items until 2 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. I have blinders. I haven't been a GM. I don't have 30 years of experience like your staff, or some of your staff, and even some of these board members. I guess part of what I'm also getting at is we just need, as a board, to shift that narrative. And it's not the Finance Committee that needs the help of the board. It's the membership. We should be reaching out to the membership to tell us how we can make our jobs as board members easier. And there's a variety of different ways to do that, which is through surveying our membership. I mean, I know we've surveyed the membership before, but I think it's been like 6 years or something. I mean, an outdated survey doesn't do anyone any good. So implementing things like that, I mean.
Well, I can see, let me just say, I can understand your surveying. I think we know that the membership would love to see the dues stay solid. And if you can come up with ways, this is what we're here to do tonight, is to discuss this. If you have specific ways that we can make that happen, that's what we're here to talk about. And so far, all I've heard are increases. So if you've got ways to reduce, then that's what we need to discuss. I know we've heard from the management, the things that they have done, and staff to try to cut costs, but costs keep going up in spite of it. There are a number of programs that they have instituted that have been able to reduce costs, but it's not enough to keep costs from going up anyway. And it's the same problem, I'm sure, with many companies. But if you have specific ideas about how we can reduce this, that's what we're here to talk about tonight, I think. That's what our job
The
is.
general manager.
Andrew, the big spike there in 2022, that shows a $208. That was, when we were in the Finance Committee, that was part of, on the reserve study. So we pulled that out, and it clearly says special assessment. That is based if you guys in the membership decide to go ahead and do any of the plans on that. So we pulled that out just so that we could pull that out of the reserve study to get a realistic number to start looking at to build your reserve funds and what needs to be done. So those numbers on the bottom are your special assessments to do some of the bigger projects. So when you start looking at that going forward in the plan, those are things that are going to be put out to the membership. They're going to be fully vetted all the way across the board with the board and the membership to figure it out. So those items are off of that right now. So the top number, that 2779, and the next number down is just to do what's on the current reserve study, not anything with the buildings. That's just to catch up with what we have day-to-day operations. There is nothing out of the ordinary. So when you're talking about a 20-year plan, yes, you're correct. Those big numbers should be broken out over a 15 to 20-year over that amount of time to get a flat, steady budget increase. But what you also have to look at is when that runs out, that time runs out, you're going to have to do your reserve study. Has got to be to a number that is funded so you do not ever have to go back and special assess the members. That is the ultimate end game in all of this. And no, it is not going to happen this year. It is not going to happen next year. To get to 50, 60% funded is going to take you and the association 15 to 20 years. There will be years where there are special assessments to get some of the bigger projects done based off of board and residents' input, first and foremost. But at the end of the day, you have to have the plan at end of 15 to 20 years, a 50 to 60% in your reserves. There's no way around it. So that 20 years, 25 years from now, when all of us are gone, it's not an issue going forward. We have to build the reserve study and everything for the community for the next 40 years. Unfortunately, it was not done properly prior. All we can do now collectively as a group is to tear it all apart, figure out what the residents need, get a flatline increase across those boards to fund your reserves so that we do not ever have to special assess again. That's why those numbers were pulled out. They are what is in the reserve study that would be truly special assessments right now, your big projects.
Madam President, Larry.
Sure.
Trying not to repeat myself. We have fairly recently, in 2016 and and 2016 primarily and in 2017, we asked the members what they wanted. And we had a big process in 2016 that went through and took a look at all of the assets and said, what are the most important assets? We have all of that information. It's not that old, number one. Number two, again, we as a board are here to protect the assets that we have. These assets belong to everybody and each of us individually. When I bought my home, I paid a certain amount of money to buy in to the association's asset pool. I own a piece of the pool, I own a piece of the marina, the golf course. Everybody else here owns a little bit of everything. So now we're, after 45 years or longer of underfunding what actually is necessary to do what is supposed to be done, we're now faced with a choice. Okay, do I give up a certain amount of my property value in this building, in that pool over there, in the marina down there? Do I give that up so that some people can be more comfortable with the fact that they and others have been living here through a period of not funding what they had contractually obligated themselves to fund, which is everybody here pays equally to fund equally all of the costs of the association. Every single person here bought in and signed the contract necessary to do that. Nobody bought in with a special clause saying, oh, but if I don't like something like the pool, I don't have to pay for it. No, And so in order to defund things and get rid of things, that's going to take more than the board just saying, oh, the building is dangerous, we need to tear it down now or people are going to get hurt. That's going to take the community as a whole, and a good sizable chunk of them voting to say, we voluntarily are willing to throw away the value that we actually already paid for. We're going to throw it away. It's doable, it's legal, but it's not what the board can do. What the board has to do is say, these are the costs we know about. You can see them right up there. It's not a plan per se, but we know when they're going to come up. And what I'm suggesting is a way to even that out a little bit, because as staff said, we're going to have special assessments. Well, do you want a big one or a slightly smaller one? You ain't going to get smaller unless you start paying today. Plain and simple. Now, if you want to throw things away, I mean, look, the association can vote. It's complicated and it will be expensive to set this up, but under the restrictive covenants and under the RCWs for a nonprofit corporation and under our bylaws, we can probably decide, hey, we're going to tear down the barn. We're not going to spend another dime on it except tear it down. We're not going to spend another dime on the marina, although frankly, we haven't spent a whole heck of a lot until this last year. I mean, look at the condition that it got to. And we've been living off of that income forever. Well, we can just say, we're not going to spend any more. We're going to give up that income. Well, there's another $100 grand that we don't have. You know, we're not spending whatever we need to spend, but we're also going to give up that $100 grand, plus the value in what each of us owns. Okay, we'll close the pools down. Well, what do we do about the special assessment that says keep the pools open? Well, we'll give that up. Well, okay, so that's more money that we're not going to have. I mean, on and on and on. What is left to close now? The thing that people complain about is the thing that they've complained about for years. Staff is too large, except they don't plow enough and they don't cut down enough trees. Well, how the devil are you going to do that if you reduce staff? Staff is paid too much. Well, how the devil are you going to avoid paying them a reasonable wage when they can go to McDonald's and make as much as we would be willing to offer them? It's nuts. It's not going to happen. You know, people have said, oh, we should cut down trees, and the trees that we have are mostly diseased or otherwise unharvestable because they're isolated in spot over here and a spot over there. You'd need a dirigible to come in and pluck that tree out, and you would have spent all the income from the tree on transporting it out of the community. There's literally nothing that we can do except start closing this place down. And part of the problem is that we are, in addition to required to pay equally, that's part of the reason why we only have one set of dues. It took litigation to get developed and undeveloped lots separated. That took litigation, which was expensive, of course. If we want to do something really interesting, like, oh, let's assess dues based on lot value or home value or lot size, whatever, we really need to go back to the legislature and say, let us do that. Because we don't have the authority to do that now under settled case law. We just don't. We have been told that there are things we cannot do, but I have heard that story a lot. For instance, we were told a few years back that there's no way we could capitalize the vegetation management on the side of our roads. No way, just can't be done. That's an operating expense. Lo and behold, a few months later, after thinking about it a little bit, the auditor said, hey, you know what? Maybe you can. And so now we accomplished that. And we've been told also, no, you can't set up some sort of a program for giving people relief from their assessment, because that would make a difference between assessments. Well, I think with some good, clear-eyed assessment of how, we can find a way to accomplish that, to relieve the pressure on certain people who actually have financial difficulties, as long as overall the association is not saying you are going to subsidize them in order for them to continue living here. Because right now, we don't have that authority. So it is, I believe personally, it is possible to delay collection of a certain amount of assessments and then pay that off when the property is sold. But I'm going to have a long conversation with our council on that, and that's going to take some effort. But I firmly believe it can be done, and I absolutely am going to make sure that I do everything I possibly can to make sure it does get done. But to your bottom line, dues should be the last thing that we should do. I totally agree. And guess what? I have looked at the history of this community. I have been involved for years in the budget talks, the assessment talks, and as far as I can tell, this is the last thing. We have been pushed to this because people were not willing to do what should have been done years ago. We no longer have any options. Otherwise, significant assets are going to disappear, and that will reduce my asset value that I already paid for when I bought my home.
Madam President.
My proposal is primarily to help us get prepared to deal with 2022. We don't need to know what particular street is going to get fixed in 2022. We just need to know in 2022, there's going to be surf and roads to take care of. And we're going to have to pay a lot, so we better start saving now. That was my point. Now, it may not pass. It may not be something that the board is willing to do, but I wanted to make sure that everybody on this board was well aware of the decision that we're making. We are making to raise future dues more because we're unwilling to raise current dues a little bit more than they have been proposed by staff and the finance committee.
Okay,
That will
we've
be
had a
done.
rather wide-ranging discussion at this point of the, of our
Can I get on the list, please?
roads
to
and
talk?
surf.
Oh, yeah, please.
Madam President, before Sarah, we have Eric.
Yes, Sarah?
No, before Sarah, we
Okay.
have Eric.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm agreeing with a lot of what, taking the temperature of the community for what it feels its needs are in the future. And I think that we're responsible to do that. We have a long-range planning committee that its charter demands that. And as far as community members getting involved and getting their desires to be a part of the plan, it's how many people have been turned away from joining the long-range planning committee?
None?
That's right. Anyone who wants to get on the bandwagon of creating this community plan that is over the next 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years, which is exactly the timeframes that we're talking about tonight, the Long Range Planning Committee is the place to be, because that's where all of the deep dives take place. That's where all of the granular information and needs are discussed. And then recommendations are brought back to the board. And that's the only way that the board can do its business is by having committees do a lot of those intricate, detailed work. And so I would really recommend that we move in the direction of helping our reserves. We know that we're completely underfunded in our reserves, and if we can do anything to move that bubble forward, then I'm in great support of that. I also agree that the proposal, the draft that we came away from last week with, a month ago, staff brought us their first draft of a budget. And the board said, no, we are going to look at what's mandated, what is our needs, and anything more than that is going to be a battle. And I think that's where we're at right now. We're at that battle. We've taken account of the mandates and the needs. And if we can just start funding reserve, just that tiny little bit that we talked about last week, I think that we're in a positive direction. Would I like to get us up to 30 or 60% of reserves funded? Absolutely. I think at some point we're going to have to. But as the manager said, that's a ways down the road before we get to that point. And so I think anything moving in a positive direction is where I'd like to be right now. And God, people, join the Long Range Planning Committee.
Madam President, Sarah.
Sarah?
Okay, I have some general comments in response to Larry. I disagree with almost everything Larry said. I agree with the comments about dues should be a last resort. I disagree with the fact that it's not equally, if not more, our responsibility to keep the dues at a reasonable level for the members. Again, this didn't happen overnight. We can't fix it overnight, and the reserve study is based on maintaining all of our assets. That's not realistic. If we're trying to maintain all of our assets and rebuild all these buildings that need all this work, dues will be $400 a month, and people can't afford that. The fact that we're even talking now about a $100 increase in 2 years is unreasonable. People cannot afford that. People don't want to pay that living here. They don't see the benefits. Most people live in higher gates that don't live close to the golf course. We're not willing to have tough discussions like maybe the golf course needs to break even. If it doesn't break even, maybe we need to not fund the capital items related to golf. What about let's not give raises every year to all of our staff? We're not willing to have any of those discussions. Where's the increase that just happened with the giant dues increase that just happened? That's just ignored. Now we just want to talk about how much can we raise the dues for our members to fund all this. It's unreasonable. It's not possible. Tearing down buildings is absolutely an option. What just happened with the rotunda? A bunch of the community didn't want that, and the board decided to move forward with that. So that absolutely can happen and has happened. And if you give the community the facts of we either have to get rid of this asset or it's going to cost this much money, I think it would be very obvious what people would say. I know what I would say as a person who owns multiple lots in Sudden Valley. Also, I think the idea that some of these assets increase my property value is not true. I don't feel that the community center does anything for my property value. I don't feel that the pool does anything for my property value. So I don't think losing them as opposed to paying $400 a month is an issue. Back to our original discussion of what we're here, I have several things through the budget that I would recommend changing to improve our budget, I guess, for the year. Two general ones. One is I would recommend cutting any staff raises that are not directly related to the minimum wage or direct compression where an employee would be making more than a supervisor due to the minimum wage increases. It's not a popular thing. It wasn't a popular thing when I brought it up before, but again, we're having to make hard decisions and we have to make cuts somewhere. Operations budget cannot just keep going up and up and up. It's not reasonable. So that would be my first general one. My second one would be either golf breaks even or we remove the capital items related to golf from the SURF plan, because all those really are part of that asset and those costs. So those would be my two general ones. And then do you want me to go through each of them that I have individually or have discussion on each one? I don't know how you want to do it.
Sarah, could you repeat number 2, please?
Have golf be required to either break even or remove the capital costs related to golf from the SURF plan.
I'm still missing the...
I got it.
Okay.
I'll write it for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
As I said, it's been
Wait a
rather...
minute, Madam President, I believe she has more.
I'm sorry?
Do you want me to go through them individually now, just list them all, and then we can discuss them all, or?
Yeah.
I don't know how you want to go about this.
I think that would be easier.
Okay. So I'm going based on the packet that we went through last time, because obviously I'm not there, I can't see the screen. So I'm just going to give page numbers from our packet of the department summaries. So page 15, under 4830 advertising income, I would increase that to $32,000 from the current $30,000 number based on the last 3-year trend.
I'm sorry, could you repeat
Say
that?
that again, please.
Yeah. Okay, so page 15, advertising income, 4830. Increase the 2020 budget to 32,000 from 30,000 based on the last 3 years.
Increase it to
Increase
32.
it to 32, is that what you're saying?
Increase it to 32,000?
From 30.
Yeah, it's an income.
Okay, number 4.
Okay, page 17, the first line, 4240, other AR income, title and recording fees. I would increase that to 35,000 based on the last 3 years trend.
I believe she said 4240, the tile and recording fees, be increased from 30,000 to 35.
Yeah.
Oh, did you say 45?
Oh, sorry, what?
Okay.
Number 5, please.
Okay, page 27, under maintenance, remove the additional staff member of 50,671.
Repeat again, please.
Okay. Page 27, remove the additional FTE of maintenance. It's B5395.01, WTB maintenance, 1 FTE of 50,671.
Remove entirely?
Yeah.
There will actually be 3 places that that's affected,
Oh, okay.
for a total of
Oh, I see. So, yeah, the
$64,077.
next 2 would be those ones. Okay. So then that, on page 28, the 10,994 is tied to that?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, and then, okay, page 31, 5325 recruiting expense. Remove the $7,400 for the wage study software.
Some software. Repeat, please.
Okay, page 31, GL code 5325 recruiting expense.
Yes.
Remove the $7,400 for the payroll benchmarking software.
Point of information, not all 7,400 is for the payroll benching software. Only 5,317 is for the payroll software.
Okay, so I would just recommend the 5,317 then, please. Also on that page, 5,100 GM discretionary funds, I would drop to 5,000.
Repeat, please.
Sarah, could you repeat that, please?
Discretionary
Yep.
funds.
So same page, 5,100 GM discretionary funds, drop that from 7,500 to 5,000.
Number 8, please.
Okay, and this is my last one. Page 38, line 4350, new home construction. increase that to 60,000.
Again, it's 4350, go from 35,000 to,
60,000.
Madam President, may I repeat these to her to make sure? Sarah, let me repeat these so I make sure that I have what you're saying.
Okay.
Number one was staff raises not connected to the minimum wage be eliminated.
Yeah.
Number two, that golf breaks even or it's removed, and I lost that last part.
Remove any capital-related items for golf on the surf plan for 2020.
Okay, I'm still having trouble with that last part.
Remove capital costs from the SURF plan.
Okay.
Okay. on the
Remove
surf-
capital costs from SURF plan.
Related to golf.
Thank you. Number three, increase advertising to $32,000.
Yeah.
Number four, item 4140, increase to 35,000.
It's 4240, but yeah.
Thank you. Number five, on page 27, remove 539501 on software.
No, that's the position. That's a FTE.
It's the maintenance person.
5395 is 50,671.
Now, would you Sarah, would you repeat what page and line that is?
Okay, page 27, and it's the line under payroll and benefits. It's called B5395.01, budget WTB maintenance 1 FTE.
Oh, so that was an FTE. The number was right, but it's an FTE.
Yeah.
And Jennifer said there was additional funds.
Yeah, 3 more spots.
There are 3 lines in total, 2 in the maintenance department, the line that Sarah said, and then B for budget 6795.01 for 10,994 on the next page. And then there's a third related item, a small facility supply for $2,412, B 6795.01.
So you've got all of those already.
Correct.
Thank you.
And then the,
It's just part of what it is.
yeah,
Page 30.
number 6, page 31, on item 5325, recruiting expense, that was the deletion of the software, which is 5317, and
Yeah.
no money, no pennies. Number 7, item 5100, drop discretionary to 5,000. That was on the
Yeah.
GM discretionary. And number 8, item 4350, increase to 60,000.
Yeah.
Thank you. Got a lot to talk about, Madam President.
Yeah, and I just want to finish up on the discussion we were having about the capital funding first, before we jump into this other variety of different suggestions. Is there a consensus about adding additional funding to surf and roads this year? Who would be in favor of increasing our reserves for roads and for surf?
Over and above what's in the budget for right now.
Right, over and above what's in the budget right now. It just gets a feeling. Who would feel comfortable increasing the contributions to are the capital funds, either SURF or roads.
You're not stipulating exactly what the
Not
increase
the
would be?
amount and not, I'm just looking for a kind of a conceptual idea of where we're headed with this. Now, I'm seeing only 2 hands that are up, so I'm feeling that this is a beyond our comfort level to further increase our reserves until we know exactly what we're paying for. Okay, so let's move on into the suggestions that Sarah has made. Now, these are more, Carol, go ahead.
I just want to give a point of information on the final one that she had on her list. That was to increase the housing income fees to $60,000. First of all, that's an uneven number. It would be approximately 17 housing starts rather than 10. But out of that also would come 20, for each housing start we have, there's 2,750, I'm believing, for each house that's started to pay for the contract person that we use to monitor and inspect those homes. So out of that 60,000 would be 47,000. So the net difference is significantly less. So, you know, it'd be about 13,000 would be the total different amount rather than, I don't know what the other one was.
Okay. As we're making adjustments to this, do we want it to make that change?
I'm not suggesting a change, I just wanted to give a point of information on that.
Okay, all right. I'm hearing a couple of different things here. One is an increase in our statements of income, and the other one is decreases in our expenditures. Do you want to start with the increases in the revenues? Are there any concerns about doing something like Larry?
Yeah, revenue. In light of what Carol just said with regard to the fact that that increase would have to be decreased by a certain amount of, that means that it's even, in order to reach that 60, it would have to be an even larger number of home starts. I think that's just completely not supportable on the facts. We've had 2 really good years. This year is a decent year, but we have no clue what next year is going to be. None whatsoever. And the latest news are slowing down everywhere in the state except Bellingham. And so it's not clear to me that we can avoid that slowdown much longer. I think it would not be prudent to increase that income by nearly that much. Now, maybe some increase is appropriate, but I'd leave that to Carol and Jennifer as to what that actual amount should be. But, you know, obviously it would have to reflect the net of whatever expenses we had related to those homes.
Do the board members feel that it is realistic to increase projected incomes for housing starts?
No.
I'm not seeing any agreement with that. Mike?
No.
No, okay. Okay. Were there other revenue increases that were proposed? No.
Yes, 40,
4240.
4240 to 35,000.
For which? Let's see.
Page 15.
Title
For
and
what
recording
purpose?
fees.
Title and recording fees.
For what?
Title and recording fees. It wasn't,
35,
but that's
and
based
that would
on
go
the
along
past-
with the housing starts, this,
That's directly tied to home sales.
and so that probably is not realistic. If you're not going to have more housing starts, you're going to not do it.
But is that just for new homes or for
Or
houses?
or sales.
Sale.
What is it, homes or sales?
So that could potentially be realistic, because based on the past 3, almost 4 years, it's been quite a bit higher than 30,000.
Okay.
That one seemed a bit more reasonable, excuse me, that one seemed a bit
Yes.
more supportable to me. It's not clear that we'll have that kind of turnover in the future, but turnover is a whole lot less variable than actually housing starts.
We're actually down 25% for home sales for this time this year over this time last year.
That's very important to know. Would you repeat that again?
We're down 25% for housing sales. We track it in accounting how many new homeowners there are, and we're down 25% over this time last year.
Well, does that mean, sorry for the quick follow-up, but does that mean that the number that's in the proposed budget is supportable or not?
I think that the number that's in the proposed budget is supportable, but if home sales continue to $1,000.
But it's not that big an increase, I don't think it'll make.
Well, as I said last week, I am very uncomfortable with estimating increased
Overstating
income
revenues, yeah.
that is not supportable. And while I thought it was reasonable, it may not be. If we're already down 25% compared to this time last year, it may not be reasonable to increase this. That's news to me, but I only want to go what we can factually support.
How does is there a board consensus that we should increase it or not? I'm not seeing any firm support for it.
I have a hard time increasing expected revenue for something that we have absolutely no control over and very limited insight into historically, and especially considering the trend that Jennifer just mentioned. I don't know how that we can expect next year to be an increase when right now we're seeing a decrease.
Okay. Next we come to, let's see, decreased expenses for different items. Would anybody like to speak to any of those?
I'll just speak generally. I don't like any of them, but I am willing to support them if the board is trying to be on an extremely tight budget. I'm willing to support these proposals, but I don't like any of them, in particular getting rid of the FTE, because we have already gotten comment from the community that it is inappropriate to be postponing safety-related repairs. But if the board is willing to accept all of those decreases, I'm willing to go along with it.
Okay, other comments? Paula, did you? Oh, Whitney?
I would agree with Larry that maintenance position is probably one of the most important positions from all of the departments that we heard from. And, they're behind, 2,300 hours worth of work and one person working.
Whitney, could you speak up a little bit? I can't hear you at all, sorry.
I just said I agree that the maintenance position is probably one of the most important positions that was presented to us from all of the department managers, and I would hesitate to cut that one.
Am I getting kind of general agreement on that? Okay. And there was one item about no staff raises except for the mandated minimum wage raises. Can anybody speak to that?
Madam President Whitney?
I agree with Sarah on that one. I think that it is a tough call, but I think that we have to, for 2020, stick to that mandated raise by the state and then the wage compression.
The wage compression.
Now I'm unclear.
Oh, because
I thought Sarah was proposing no wage compression adjustment.
That's
No.
what that says to me.
Yes.
I think what she said, and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought you said the state mandated raise, including any wage compression, that it would affect a manager making the same amount as someone that was a minimum wage person, because if it's going up to 15.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Thanks, Whitney.
Yeah.
Okay, so that clarifies it. If I understood, Sarah, then you're saying that obviously the mandated is included in an appropriate increase, but you are also including a certain amount of wage compression adjustment?
Yes, in direct situations where that increase results in them making equal or more than a manager.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That's important.
So I have a question to Jennifer. Is that easy to ascertain?
It would take me, 10 or 15 minutes at least. Just
Okay, thank you.
sit down and calculate that.
Easy, but not for tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Madam President, Paula.
Oh, yeah.
Did you want to go?
No.
This is more just a point of information from a human resources, hiring, recruiting standpoint. I absolutely think that we should compel the least amount of increases this year as possible, and certainly holding to wage compression in both the managers and with minimum wage. I would be somewhat reluctant, and I don't know how to do this, other than strong wording to compel managers to hold as closely as possible. I spend probably 80% of my job right now recruiting in this marketplace, and I'm telling you, people can walk out and go get a job somewhere else so easily right now. And I mean, it's why I've put in 55 hours at work this week already, and it's Thursday for recruiting, and there's a high cost to turnover. And so I don't know how to compel that, but I would be careful to put a hard stop on any increases, especially in professional positions, because those are very difficult to replace, especially in a marketplace where we have unemployment where we do, and we have so many people ready to hire qualified, talented people. Again, I don't know how to put that in the budget, but I would be careful with
I certainly
that.
agree that if you're going to recognize wage inflation, you must also recognize market reality.
It's an incredibly difficult market for professional retention right now.
Madam President Whitney.
I understand that right now it is hard to find good help, and I think that we have great staff here in Sun Valley, but I think we need to look outside the box, whether, maybe giving bonuses would be less expensive than giving across-the-board raises, or giving some sort of perk at every quarter, or something that would be less expensive than an actual raise per salary.
I'd like to remind everyone that last week we heard that if there is a change in personnel, the change would cost us in the neighborhood of $3,000 per person.
That is
For the training, et cetera?
That's a $10 an hour employee. A manager would be somewhere, Lisa, about 6, maybe 7. What's that? So for a manager, you're looking at 15% of their salary to retrain and rehire.
Conservatively.
So therefore, I'm not able to do that math in my
Say you
head.
have a $75,000 employee, 15% of that is about 13 grand.
But one thing that we do have to think about is that maybe in pulling this from the budget would, in the long run, if we were to lose these people, would cost us more money than if we were to retain them.
I want to comment to that.
She can
We won't look at revenues based on not knowing what the future holds, yet we're trying to look at expenses, trying to know what the future holds of who's going to leave. That's completely unreasonable. You can't look at one way and one the other. We don't know what the future holds. You can't predict if people will leave, and we're in a difficult position. I mean, it is what it is. Minimum wage is going up drastically. It's already going to cost us a lot. We can't afford to give raises across the board.
Well, as a retort to that, I think I have a better shot at retaining somebody if they were to get the necessary raise than saying that I'm going to have 27 more houses sold.
To follow up with what Whitney said, one thing that I would just also say that we could look at, oftentimes non-pay perks can be very good ways to keep people, but then we're also talking about cutting discretionary funds. So regardless of whether or not we take that we switch that, that's still, that money for perks or whatever, that all still has to come from somewhere. So when we look at that, it's a really good idea, and sometimes that, I've been able to cap people and give them a bonus or some other sort of perk, industry guidance tells you that oftentimes, especially millennials, are looking for perks, even over salary. But again, you have to plan for and budget for those perks if you're going to, if you're going to provide them. And I would, again, say, I know you, I think Lisa's got some really good information there, but I would personally say that 16% for a professional is probably conservative for retraining and rehiring, because you rarely hire somebody less than what the person was making once they leave for a different job.
Joe?
Okay, 16% of annual salary for low-paying jobs earning under $30,000. A $10 employee, retail employee, is $3,328. Someone in a mid-range management position between 30 and 50 is 20% of your salary. So for a $40,000 employee, that's $8,000. You really don't want to know what the upper levels are. It's about 213% for upper management.
What'd you just say?
213% for upper management.
How does this reflect on the suggested change? Anybody want to make a?
Poorly. Yeah, as Eric just said, it doesn't make it sound like a good idea to cap these kinds of salaries, because we're going to spend the money anyway. Now, maybe we should know that we're not going to pay them as salary. I mean, but we're going to pay them somehow. We might want to give benefit or some sort of benefit or some sort of a bonus instead of salary, but the total amount of money, I think, as budgeted, is the more this discussion goes on, the more it sounds like a reasonable amount to begin with.
So leave it where it is.
Just to leave
Anybody
it
else
where
want
it
to
is.
comment on changing that? Carol?
I can't even imagine what the difference might be to limit. I mean, if you wanted to say to limit it, but I certainly wouldn't pair that with also limiting the discretionary discretionary fund, because that's where your perks are going to come from. And it's true, that's another alternative. You're never going to prevent people from leaving and finding a better position for themselves. We don't have much to offer here at Sudden Valley as far as career advancement and, you know, moving up the ladder, so to speak. It's just not there. So people will probably, sorry?
I said, but we're so fun to work with.
We are fun to work with, and I will say that most of those people who work with us, I'm going to say this and assume it's true, because I've heard this from many, is that they enjoy the environment and they like the teams that they work with, and you know, that it is good from that standpoint. It's a good quality of work environment compared to some corporate environments that are, you know, bigger companies. But you're not going to stop people from leaving. We've had 3 in a very short amount of time who have left. And so that's going to happen. I think a perk is probably more likely to maintain someone, when I mean if it's done properly, a better way of keeping and maintaining someone or a group of people than large salary increases. But I don't know enough about the salaries for these people to be able to say wholesale that we need to limit them, but I'd certainly be willing to hear a suggestion. I just don't know.
And if they come down to always, what is the size of the dollar amount that we're looking at?
Yeah.
How many dollars do you think that are we talking about here?
Hard to say.
She has
She
to
said
do some
she
calculation.
needed
She
Total
said
salary,
she'd need 15
total salary change? I can give
Yeah.
you that number.
total amount.
About 5,000, about 50,000, you know, if it's,
Madam President, while she's doing that, may I ask a question?
You just did.
Mr. Clever. The finalization of the budget is to be voted on this evening?
No.
No, we will not be voting on this evening because of the state constraints. We cannot vote until about 60 days before we present it to the membership. So in order to stay within our timeline, we have to wait until, it'll be August the 29th when we do a final vote on this. And we're just discussing by consensus where we want to move. Now, we also will have input from the members at the two town halls.
Okay.
So
I
that's
just
another
wanted-
reason this is not a final vote tonight.
I just wanted to make sure, thank you.
Yeah. Oh,
And I had a question from a community member on that too. After the two, just so that I cover that, after the two community town halls, the board meets again
Right.
to make any changes
Right.
based on the feedback from the community so that we can take that and get those changes put in
Yeah.
as well. So that I believe there's another meeting for us as even before we even get to voting so that we can change, do this
If we choose, yeah.
based on
Correct.
community input as well.
Correct.
So therefore, it seems, although not reasonable, but that we would be able to have a number that would say if you did the wage compression and well, we have to bring them up to minimum
Yeah.
wage. But if we were to curtail everything beyond that versus losing somebody, and I know Sarah's going to say, we don't know if we are, we don't know if we're going to retain them, and I somewhat agree with that. But we would still have kind of a vague number as to if we lost
Right.
a person or two, so we could say this is this and that's that.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, looking, Mike, you did write down the list. What of the changes have we not addressed yet?
Golf breaks even, or it's removed
Okay.
from,
Or is what?
it's removed from capital.
Yeah, all of his capital expenses would be deferred, apparently. Certainly not spent in
Okay.
this coming
Would
year.
anybody like to speak to the golf proposal? Carol?
The only thing I'll mention is that we just approved the irrigation for both this year and next, so that, it's already been obligated, so that particular one, I think, would need to stay in the budget for next year.
Yeah, well, it's already been approved. Now, this is not, do we know what other golf capital expenses are proposed for next year?
There are some, but I don't have that list memorized. I know we went through a very
In the
exhaustive
capital list at the back
list.
of the-
Yes, there is one in here. And in fact, it's,
Yeah.
actually,
I was just going to say that if that's what the board decides, then, we would just remove that when we replanned for surf here at the end of this year. But there are a few, as you said, golf capital items in there. I think I've got that list.
Yeah, if you could give us a general
Right.
round number.
Excuse me, Madam President, there was from Sarah, there was an increase of $2,000 to advertising.
that was
All right.
advertising
Yes, advertising
income.
Let's talk about that.
Income.
Sarah, can you say that again?
It was an increase to advertising income.
Is that views
Page
advertising?
15.
Yes.
What?
I believe that is, Lisa, that is advertising for the views? Yes.
How would this be accomplished? By raising the rates?
We already have put in more than I'm saying the last 3 years. We've had above 32,000 for 2016,
It is above
17,
30.
and 18.
That's not an unrealistic number.
So 32 is an acceptable number,
Yeah.
you believe?
Okay.
Okay.
It's great, thank you.
Okay. So you're saying that
Also,
that,
as a point of information, it's about 100,000 in additional golf that's aside from irrigation for 2020.
Would you say that again? 100,000 in addition to the irrigation? Is that what you just
Yeah,
said?
proposed for golf for 2020 in the surf plan.
for what?
Yeah, do you have any items that you know of?
Yep. It's golf bridges replacement, golf bunkers replacement, golf green and tees boxes rebuild, golf
Page
practice putting green,
116.
and golf restroom renovation.
So the 2028 items that were ranked earlier this year for golf are highlighted here. It's a mower, a fairway mower, and a greens roller, and that's sums to about $93,689. And then the 2028 items, which they can't. Oh. There we go. The 2019 B items, excuse me, are golf bunkers, a mower, and I apologize, that mower could also be for parks. I'm not sure. Okay, and a utility vehicle.
I'm sorry, staff had a conversation going that I didn't hear.
Yeah,
all of it.
the Toro Greens or Toro Triplex, that would not be going to parks. However, the carry-all could possibly be used in parks.
Although these items are on the capital list for next year, they do not necessarily have to be purchased. By simply removing them from the list or pushing them out a year, we're again just pushing the capital problem forward. I'm not comfortable with just pulling things out of the capital list. Paula?
If I recall, because if they're on there, they're listed as a B item for this year that wasn't done, or an A item for next year. An A indicates imminent failure if we don't replace it. If we don't replace those and we have an imminent failure, how does that affect our ability to meet the golf projections as they stand for next year? And is that going to hit us for a larger loss than we're already anticipating?
If it's an intimate danger, and it will affect the bottom line. As far as like the bunkers being rebuilt or equipment, we could probably push those out. The only thing that I would really caution on pushing out and taking away would be the bridges. That falls into health, safety, and welfare, and if it goes down, we are liable if someone breaks through. And that would cost us a whole heck of a lot more than $9,000.
So if we were to push some of that equipment into a future year, you don't see that affecting?
We could get away with it. I mean, we've done it you've done it for years. We could work on trying to keep them together the best we could, but you also would have to realize that they will probably push stuff run to fail at that point. So when you run to fail, it may not make it the next year, but that's the decision that you guys would have to make. Of the equipment and the bunkers, I would leave that up to you guys to decide if you want us to go ahead and run them to fail, and when they fail, they fail. I get that, I understand that. The only thing that I caution you 1,000% is you do not defer maintenance on the bridges, because if something happens, it'll cost us way more than $9,000.
Madam President.
Larry?
Madam President, Carol.
Carol?
I just wanted to mention how we rank A and B and C and D and E and F and all that. A is ranked as close to failure and huge impact on the association. So it isn't just a nice, we'd like it. It's usually a huge impact on the operation in some way. And also, it takes into consideration if it's a piece of equipment that is requiring more to repair and hours to repair that takes so much time and money away from other items that it makes more sense to replace it. So just to keep in mind those things. Now, I understand the strategy. I think it's good. My concern is how you implement it. When do do we set it up and say, well, golf has to make it and has to break even? And so therefore, we go forward with all of those items, or do we wait I mean, how do we orchestrate this process? Do we not fund the capital and then fund it, we can't fund it later? I'm confused about how you would implement and put this in place. Anyway, I want to hear more information about how to make this happen before I would vote for this.
Yeah, I don't believe that it is a saving. By simply removing those things, or you can't remove them. You can't say, I will never again buy another mower. What you're doing is you're going to push it forward. But it's not a reduction in the capital, because the money that's coming in will be used for something else.
It's going to use some, but
Yeah.
the other piece is...
So I don't see a saving here.
No, I don't
by
think there's
removing
a
things from
savings.
capital.
My
Yeah.
concern is that if, I mean, it's just like anything. If you're, it's almost punitive. If it doesn't happen, if we don't get the funds and then you're going to remove the capital, then that impacts the quality of
the product we're
the
selling.
product we're trying to increase. I mean, it just seems to me it's a vicious cycle.
Well, and the timing, I mean, as you pointed out, the
And
timing.
I don't know, yeah, I need to have a different
I'm
structure
feeling a
around it
consensus
before
that we
I
don't
can
want to
feel-
take this out of capital. But how about requiring the golf break even? What's your feeling around that?
Matt?
Operations, break even operations.
That has to
President,
come from staff.
Yeah, go ahead and tell her.
Eric?
Madam President, we have Andrew, Larry, Whitney, and Eric.
Okay,
I'm not
Andrew?
sure that they're discussing that particular, but their hands have
Okay.
been up for a
Are we still
while.
on golf?
Yes.
Yes, all right, go ahead, Andrew.
Microphone, please.
Microphone down, please. Thank you.
Flipping pages. So, super tough decision, right? I mean, yes, I think we should work our way as efficiently as possible to have golf, cover itself, break even. And I agree with the recommendations from Sarah, with the caveat, though, that we should take our GM's advice to not remove the bridge, whatever line item that is. So I'd be in favor of that with what the GM has stated.
Hicks?
Larry.
Larry?
Madam President.
Yeah, I'm not terribly sure how the bunkers interact with the operation of the golf course, but my gut tells me that that would be less dangerous to postpone a year. The mowers may not be such a good idea to postpone.
Those are capital items. We're into the operations portion of the discussion now.
I understand that.
Okay.
Wait a minute, what'd you just say?
No, I think it's still,
It's the golf.
I think there's a consensus that we should not take any of the equipment out of capital, but the request was still for operations to break even.
Well, okay, I'm saying it might be rational to take some things and push them forward. It might be rational to push them forward. We know we're going to have to get a new mower. That's without a doubt. The question is, when are we going to get it?
Right.
If we understand that it might fail next year, then we'll run it until it
Again, the
fails and get
consensus
another
is
one.
that we don't want to change anything from capital, so that there's kind of become a non-issue. It's again, the operations portion of it now. How
Okay,
much am I spending for
I
salaries?
take your,
and
I
how
take
much
your
for
clarification. I was not aware that we had reached a consensus on the capital issue.
maintenance? Okay.
However, with regard to and so some of my comments still remain because I don't recall hearing a consensus. Now, with regard to the statement about requiring golf to break even, I don't think it's realistic, but, that is certainly always within our purview. We have the authority to say, you better break even this year, and then if they don't, the consequences will come in 2021 with that budget. Or maybe in dealing with capital costs in 2020, but not likely.
Okay, who's next?
Madam President, Whitney.
So first of all, I'm not a golfer, but I do like having the golf course here. It's my understanding that as part of our dues, we're paying less than $3 a month for,
$2.18 a month, which is the
$2.18.
smallest piece of the pie of any of our operations.
so even if we did pull it out of the budget, we're not going to be saving out of the $140 or whatever we're proposing. It's not going to save us a lot of money, or, you know, we're not taking out $50 a month from everyone, it's $2. So I think the golf course is on the right track. I think they've been improving. I've been here 4 years. It's improved every year that I've been here, and I don't see that not continuing under the management that it's currently under. So I would recommend that it continues as is.
Mike?
Madam President, I believe that's, Eric, did you get it, Gene? No. My fault. Madam President, Eric.
I think that having a goal of operationally breaking even in a budget is absolutely one that we need to strive for in every department. But what other department do we have, like parks? Parks operationally expends more of our dues than golf, certainly. What other divisions might we have? I really can't.
Page 13 of your packet has a nice pie chart.
Every one of our community amenities is intended to increase the value of our homes, and I understand that some people don't believe that a golf course, for example, or a marina or a park improves the value of their homes. But I bet that any of those folks, if they were going to sell their homes, they would be happy that their real estate agent listed those amenities as things that could increase the value and help people be enticed to buy the home. And so I really believe that we have a cost of operations of all of our community assets. And if they can pay for themselves, that's fantastic. But the fact that a park can't pay for itself, or any of our amenities can't ultimately pay for themselves, I don't see that as a poor business, because each of those divisions aren't intended to be a standalone business. They're a part of a greater synergy here, a part of our association. And so requiring one of those divisions to either be break even or profitable or bust, I think that's unrealistic. I do like the goal of getting as close to that as possible. Absolutely. And I think that we need to press those divisions to be as close to break even or profitable as possible. But I think that requiring it punitively is probably unrealistic when we're looking at the greater goals of the entire association.
Yeah.
Madam President, you're up.
Okay. I am looking at business, at golf as a business. And you have an investment to make, and then you have the return on your investment. It's kind of a catch-22, because if you start to tell golf that they have to cut all of their expenses down to the point where you deteriorate your business, then you're not going to start losing money, because people aren't going to see this as an attractive place to be, to spend their money, to come and play golf. And so you have to put as much into it within reason in order to protect your business. But you also want to build up your revenue, and you're constrained by what the market will bear. We have several golf courses in this area, and you have to be within their, if you price yourself out of range, again, you're going to start losing customers. And it's a fine balance, and at this point, I think we need to express to the golf business that we would like to see them work as hard as they can to break even, and maybe increasing whatever the market will bear as far as revenue is concerned, but keeping up the products so that people will want to come in and use it. So I'm not comfortable telling them that you have to cut something when I don't understand what cutting the costs is going to do to the business that you're trying to sell.
Madam President, Larry.
A couple of things. It's been said a couple of times that people do or do not agree that any amenity, golf in particular, has an impact on your home value. That may or may not be true. That's a question of market assessment, and I have heard stories on both sides from real estate professionals. My point earlier in talking about assets of the corporation my point is that it is an asset of the corporation. It's a valuable asset of the corporation, and whatever value that corporation has when you buy your home, you're getting it. It may not change your home price that much, but it is a piece of property we each own. So there is value in it. That's one thing. The other thing is, I don't think it's unreasonable to tell golf that we expect them to make more than what we have put in the budget this year. What are we figuring, an $85,000 loss? We're assuming next year? 74? Okay, so let's cut that back. We can certainly cut that back. I don't think it's going to do much to the budget, but it might do some. It certainly will send a message without damaging the business. I will just say in support of what you just said, Madam Chair, is that in 2013, we had a tenant in the clubhouse that was supposed to be providing food service for both the community and the golf course, and they pulled out rapidly. And it took us over a year of work to fix the destruction that had been left behind in the kitchen at great expense, and then get someone else to come in and gin up their business. In the process, during that 1 year time period, golf had no food supply support. And as we heard, I believe it was last week, it might have been the week, it might have been one of those 2 days, I don't remember which, maybe the first day. As we heard, it was the year later that income in golf went down because people had been pissed off because of the fact that they hadn't had food service in 2014. So income went down in 2015. These kind of things in the golf business we have already experienced are very slow, and we need to treat them very carefully so that they don't come back and bite us in another year.
Do
Madam
we have a
President?
feeling of consensus for, okay.
I just want to make a suggestion based on something that the GM said, and I know we've kind of moved away from capital, but I'd like to go back to that for just a second.
Briefly.
Very briefly. Would it be possible, SURF has already looked at, or the SURF team has already looked at this and already rated it, but what I heard was there were some of those pieces that might be able to realistically be pushed out that may not fall into that AB category, if I'm not putting words into your mouth. Would it be possible to really take a closer look at that and decide, are those still considered A's and B's? And does that make sense based on what was said?
That can be reviewed when we go look at SURF for 2020. I mean, we could probably push some of it out. Again, if we're pushing machinery, and I'm going to use machinery because that's what we're looking at, we have no idea. We could push it, and you could wake up one morning and go to turn it over and she doesn't run.
And to be clear, I wouldn't suggest pushing it if you still put it at an A.
Well,
But based on what you said,
we could,
it's kind of clarification on what you
we
said.
can push anything out you guys want us to push out. We will do whatever you guys suggest, but you also have to realize the ongoing fact that it is a machine and machines do break. So we can push it out if that's the general consensus of this board. We can look at it, we can move it out, but you also have to realize if it's an A or a B, even a C, you have a piece of machinery. We do not have a crystal ball and say, this machine's gonna run today, is she gonna run tomorrow? I don't know that, no one does that. But that's some of the stuff that you have to look at. We can push it, but there's also, you have to realize we might have to come to you guys, once it dies, to say we have to replace.
Let me re-clarify the question then. Do you think that any of those pieces of equipment that are currently in 2020 no longer qualify as A's or
Off the top of my head, without talking to Jacob, no, I cannot answer that to you right
And I
now.
suggest that,
Can
even
I
if
make
we
a
do
point
push
of
it out
information? There is
or
no
take it off the
equipment
list,
for
that we are
golf
not
in
going.
2020. None.
Wait a
None
minute,
of
Sarah,
these are equipment.
let Leslie finish.
Yeah, we are not suggesting that we reduce the SURF, because if we don't spend it on those pieces of equipment, we'll spend it on something else. So as far as the dues are concerned, I don't believe that this will result in a savings of SURF. Sarah?
None of these are equipment. None of the ones in 2020 are equipment, and none of them are listed as level A. So I don't know why we keep coming back to equipment, because none of these are. Two of them, the two big ones, well, the putting green is new. The renovation is just redoing bathrooms. None of these are equipment pieces. And if we move them off of here, we're putting them towards other things. So I think it is very important and worthwhile.
Point of information, several of the golf items that are 2019 Bs and 2020 As are pieces of equipment.
So I'm looking at the handout you gave us in the packet, page 116, and none of them are equipment. So is there another version?
So Sarah, on 116, I'm looking, just to help everyone here, I'm looking at bridges replacement, bunkers replacement, greens and tee boxes rebuild.
Yep.
The equipment
Cutting-
starts on page 117.
On 117, I think Sarah is saying that she's only looking at items on 116. Please educate us what you are talking about.
There's nothing called golf on page 117.
Right, you have to continue on. The reserve study is broken into two components, infrastructure and equipment. The equipment starts on page 117 and continues on to pages 118 and 119. Many of the pieces of equipment that are listed on page 118 are related, and the bottom of 118 and the top of 119 are
So I still don't see anything specifically called golf. So can you give me a lot, like a row number that you're referencing as an example?
Sarah, if I may, I believe you're looking at golf bridges replacement, 9,225. Golf bunkers replacement, 12,923. Golf greens and tee boxes rebuild, 16,153. And golf putting green, 32,217. Is that correct?
Yep, and then there's one more after it. That's the
Restrooms.
remodel. Yes, that's what I'm referring to. I can't find anything else
I
that's
think,
golf.
Sarah, if you look on the bottom of page 118, starting at line item number 227, maybe even 226,
206.
But that's what she's
fairway mower, gang mower, utility vehicle, a John Deere mower, I'm assuming those are golf?
Yes,
But what she's talking about is on page 116.
116.
Yeah, but
She's talking-
because she couldn't find any,
But she said surf, to cut
Equipment.
all surf.
she's looking for equipment and she can't find anything.
Because what she's looking at, that she's discussing, is the stuff that's on page 116, which is
No,
not,
but she just asked us to show her where the golf equipment was.
Right, so when you say all surf items, Sarah, we took that to mean both the
All surf items.
bunkers, et cetera, and the mowers. What were you actually referring to?
I was actually referring to what's on page 116. I apologize. I didn't realize these weren't labeled as golf if they were golf related. So I'm seeing now, fairway mower, 45,000. I'm assuming that's only golf. But that actually wasn't what I was referring to. I didn't know that was associated with golf. golf.
Yeah, that's what Jennifer meant when she said 2 pieces of equipment coming to around 90 grand. I forget whether, it was somewhere in that range, she said, and that was the fairway mower replacement and the Toro approach mower replacement on 118, as far as I can tell. But if you were just talking about land-related issues and costs on page 116, then that's different from what we heard you say.
I guess the difference to me with equipment, for instance, like a mower, is those can be used elsewhere, not just golf, whereas the pieces on 116 are specific all to golf 100%.
I think we heard from the GM that in fact, those 2 particular pieces of equipment are primarily golf, although one of them might be usable by parks, but they are primarily golf. So once again, what is it that you're recommending? If you're just recommending 116, we need to rethink your proposal again.
Well, I'm referencing anything in golf, but I think if there's a consideration, it should be by item as opposed to just a clear, we're not changing any of them by consensus, which wasn't really even consensus.
Okay. I tell you what, it is 20 after 9 at this point. Can we take a 10-minute break and then come back to this again and maybe clarify what we're talking about? Okay? I'll be back here at 9:30. Okay, let's come back in session. It is 9:31 now, and we do have Sarah on the phone. Okay, I would like to start out by asking Sarah, are you proposing that we cut the amount that goes into SURF?
Yeah.
How much?
It's 100,000. I guess facilities category. I don't know the other number because it's not labeled by golf like the other part is.
But you are proposing that equipment be removed, is that correct?
Well, it doesn't matter. What the bottom line is, we're discussing the budget. And based on the budget, do you want to remove money from SURF?
No, I'm not proposing we remove it. I'm proposing we reallocate it to something other than golf.
So the answer is?
Depends on how you want to word it.
Then make a proposal. I mean, we're discussing the budget, and are you proposing that we take money out of SURF for next year? Because as far as I'm concerned, if you do even remove pieces of golf equipment, that money will be spent on something else. So I don't see removing money from SURF. I mean, there's always more in SURF than we can fund. So let's leave that there.
But I would propose moving it out of golf to something else.
Okay?
It's still a change, but it's not a change to the bottom line.
All right, so it's basically the consensus that we leave the SURF assessment alone. And so that leaves the only question now is, shall we tell golf that they have to break even? Mike?
No, Madam President, if I may, and Sarah, please, if I'm incorrect, jump right in here. But what I think I heard her say was the money that is allocated to golf on page 116
Okay.
be taken away from golf and used elsewhere, but the money stays in SURF.
But the same amount remains,
Not the
same
equipment, this is the bunker, the,
Right. And I believe that that's not a conversation for tonight. The conversation tonight is, we're setting the budget for next year.
okay.
It's not where we're going to spend it, it's, are we going to really, SURF assessment, where it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now the conversation becomes, how about the proposal for asking the golf break even? Discussion?
I think we
Is there
have
anybody
some.
who's in favor of that?
I'm not in favor, I think it's unrealistic to have them go from $75,000 to saying, okay, next year we need you to break even. I agree with Eric in wanting them to break
Right,
even.
encouraging them, right.
If we came up with a plan that said, you know, over in the next 5 years, we want you to break even, or, you know, giving them a timeline so that every year they can set some realistic goals, that seems more reasonable to me.
Other comments, sir? Larry?
Just as a point of information, that's exactly what they've been doing, although they haven't been doing pursuant to a plan. Looking forward, what they have been doing is increasing their revenue every single year.
And I agree, that's why I said I think that they're on the right track, and every year that I've been here, they have been improving, so I don't see that changing.
Anyone else? Is there any, anyone who would be voting in favor of asking them to break even? Okay, all right, I think the consensus is that we leave the golf numbers where they are. Was there any discussion about salaries that you want to revisit? You're okay with the salary numbers?
The only thing about salary, I need more information about salaries as to what the impact is, and that's something Jennifer says she needs some time to do. And I think so another time when we're meeting, we need to get that. I couldn't make recommendations until I know how much is for minimum wage, how much is for wage compressions versus
give us that
other
information,
things, okay?
Probably, yeah.
The issue I have though is with the GM discretionary income. We had this conversation several months ago when we were discussing the assumptions for the budget.
Right.
And it was pretty much general consensus by everyone that the $7,000 was a very good number because we know the difference that perks and benefits can have for maintaining an employee, especially if we're going to consider reducing salaries. I think that the discretionary income or discretionary fund for the general manager should be kept at $7,000.
I think part of the discussion that I remember very well was the fact that at about $7,000, you're asking each member to contribute $2 a year to what will amount to employee retention. And I don't think that that's an unreasonable number.
Just a point of information, it is $7,500 is what you have in front of you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. You're right. 75.
What else do we have on the list, Mike?
Madam President, on page 31, remove part of an item number 5325, remove 5317 for the software.
That's outside software support. Can you tell us anything about that?
That is the benchmarking program that we're using to try to get wage bands that we're paying the proper wage for the people that work for us. That is an outside service that has provided us information to make sure that we're in the right area for pay.
That's a very interesting amount to pull out, and for a very interesting service, because for years I have heard complaints that we are paying our people too much. And for years we have done some form of research to say, no, we're not. So now here we have an opportunity to have a quality piece of software that will give us a much more exact answer that will likely, I would bet, bolster the answer we've already been giving for years. So it's weird to throw it out because so many people in the community have said, oh, you don't know what you're doing. But yet, that's a lot of money to spend on some software when what we've been doing over the last several years has been basically telling us reasonable information, as far as I can tell.
Eric?
How long have we been using this service now?
We just started with them. Lisa, we just
We just engaged in
Yeah.
that.
Okay, so it's an annual contract, is that?
And it's, I don't know if you can hear me, it's more than just this piece of software, it's actually a service. There are
Right.
people, actual human beings that
Right,
assist
yeah,
us.
it's, okay, so we gotta get away from talking about this as a piece of software. It's an entire service. The software is simply one of the tools that they,
Good clarification.
team uses. Now, have we received any benefit from this service so far since we started using it, or is it are we just in the very infancy? Okay. Thanks.
Is this going to take away from time that, how much time do you generally spend doing something that this service or the software is going to now help with?
Typically, every year we do benchmarking for wages. It's a lengthy process because we've been going through the Employment Security Department in the state of Washington, focusing specifically on Whatcom County. But as I stated before, not all of our positions. If all of our positions were represented in that resource, I don't think we would find it as necessary. But the fact is, so many of our positions are so unique that it's I think having a third party that does this all they do, and they're impartial, would be we've decided it would be far more beneficial, and also a time. It's going to be time consuming no matter what. Because just because someone else is pulling the numbers instead of me, there's still all the composition and discussion and everything else with regards to equitable pay. It will be some time saving, but far more peace of mind that we have accurate information.
Thank you.
Other comments? What's our consensus on this? Do we want to remove that or not? Any feeling? Carol?
Just having been in HR myself, one of the biggest issues for determining salaries for people, especially in unique positions, is matching skill set to compensation. And if you have different types of skills that aren't necessarily matchable to someone else, it's very, very difficult to come up with an appropriate compensation package. And very often the individual themselves will argue that, well, I'm worth much more, well, okay. But if they are worth more, we want to pay them what is appropriate, because if they can find another position elsewhere, that's fine. But this ensures that you have data, documented data, that supports the decisions you make. And I think it's not only important for us and for managing individuals, but back to what was said before by Larry, this is something that we hear all the time from our members, is that we pay our people way more than they're worth. I would argue that because I've seen them work. But this actually gives you data that supports that. And for $5,000, I just feel like that's a very worthwhile tool and service to use.
Question, is this a one-time expense or is this ongoing?
It's
It's an annual fee, but we have a $1,500 buyout. We're contracted for 3 years. But if we determine that it wasn't as useful or cost effective as we thought it would be, we can terminate the contract.
I just point out that I didn't feel strongly about it before, but I rethought it in terms of my normal statement, which I'll repeat again. We need to rely on expert advice and on facts. And this is expert advice, looking at the facts that they are aware of. And so I think it's silly not to pay it.
And speaking from the point of view of the water district, they do salary surveys periodically, and what you're looking at is industry-specific positions. I mean, you may have a secretary or administrative assistant or something like that, but depending on the industry that you're in, you will find a whole different set of requirements and salary levels, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's another. Carol?
Could I just mention, for instance, tell me what other organization has an ACC person that we pay. I mean, that individual's job description is probably one of the most unique you'll find in Markham County.
And interest specific.
Yes,
There's
and
no
trying
range
to,
of ways of that.
yeah, trying to find how you compensate for that fairly is very difficult.
The only place you'll find an ACC or anything like that is in homeowners association.
Yeah, and we're pretty much the biggest, almost the biggest in Washington, so.
And second largest.
Second largest.
Yeah, I'd be in favor to do it every couple years or every 3 years, but if that adds tremendous challenges, then we should just keep it. But I would support, if we, to save dollars for the organization, doing a salary survey every couple years or every 3 years, I think that's also reasonable.
Yeah, definitely next year, and then we look at it again and see, will we continue going forward? Okay, so the consensus seems to be to leave it in the budget for this year. Another item?
On Sarah's list that we've actually done them all. The only one we haven't come to an agreement on are the staff raises, and that's kind of been pushed back until we get more information from Jennifer.
But we have spoken about, right, okay. Okay, so does anybody else have anything that they would like to discuss? Paul?
Under golf, I would like us to at least discuss, as I was pouring kind of through the information again between the presentations and now, one thing that I just kept coming back to was our FTE count. And so, especially in terms of the amount of maintenance staff that we have. I know we've looked at adding one maintenance person, which still leaves a ton of work undone based on the information. I wanted to compare that against our professional staff involved, meaning people that work directly in the pro shop. And we don't have that kind of information as to what that workload is, what those hours are, and I think it deserves a discussion as to how many professional staff we have in the pro shop, and whether that is in line with what we're expecting of our maintenance department to do with, and what our pro shop is doing. So,
Are you speaking specifically to the front office as opposed to turf care?
As opposed to turf care.
Right.
Absolutely. So, and I don't have a clear, so when we talked about it before, I think it said that there were 16 bodies with which equated to 5 to 7 FTEs.
5.7.
5.7, okay. Yeah. So I just think that we need to have a discussion around that as to, this association has some serious safety things going on in terms of maintenance that are not being done. And if we're asking them to do so little, how does that compare to what our pro shop staff is staffed at with 5.7?
What you're looking at is, this is not in the shop only. You're talking about staff in head office from 6 in the morning until 7 at night in the summertime. And so you're going to have, if you plan one person behind the desk, you're going to have at least 2 or 3 people assigned to that. You've got people outside who are servicing the carts. You've got people down on the range collecting balls. You've got people going out onto the courses. It may sound like a number of people, but there's a lot of jobs that they do in order to run that place. You've got to always have somebody answering the phones and taking money for golf rounds and so forth. Larry?
I was just going to say, pretty much exactly the same thing, although it would be nice to have a better breakdown, similar to what Bruce provided, which was an excruciatingly exquisite, detailed breakdown. It would be nice to have that, and it might be possible, maybe for some of the tasks that you just enumerated to be performed by fewer people. You can certainly consider that, but at this point, I don't have enough information, and I'm relying primarily on the pro to say what the pro needs.
So what exactly are those positions? We have a director, we have a,
You have a director of golf, you have a head professional, you have a teaching professional who works in the shop as well, and then you just have a bunch of shop people who do bags, carts, range, customer service. So you're really the only two high-end people you would have would be your director of golf and head pro.
I still say I think it deserves discussion in looking at what we're asking the number of staff that we have in maintenance to do in comparison to the support that we have in golf's front office.
So we're asking for additional salary information to be brought to us, and I think this would be another good thing to come forward and say, okay, what are all of the tasks that are being performed by the front office of health? Anything else?
Just one other thing. I don't really have a number on this, but it has been pointed out that our emergency preparedness allocations, it would be nice if we could bump that up some. Now, the problem is that some of the things that were cut were big items. And you can't just say, oh, we're going to join the county association for $5,000. They want their full 20. So I don't really know how to do that, particularly for emergency preparedness. But I think that I would agree that we're enormously underfunded, given some of the things we know we have to start looking at, like forests.
If we're going to propose an increase, I would like to see an actual number and a very detailed description of why we're going to do this. It's not just give me your money.
Yeah, that makes sense as long as we're open to doing that. I request some assistance in that regard from folks who are more familiar with the specifics of it.
Bring us a proposal. Okay. Carol?
Last week, Bruce came to us with an impassioned plea for another half, if I recall correctly, of an FTE, and we haven't even considered it yet. And yet, most of the emails we receive are, how can you not fund maintenance? I'm concerned that we don't have enough people in maintenance. Do we want to spend more money? I think it came to $22,000 approximately.
23.5 if I remember.
Okay, somewhere in the lower 20s to add.
So we have one full-time and additional person.
We have already discussed the one full-time, and
It's on page 52 of your agenda packet. It'd be approximately 79 cents per month
a month per person.
per lot.
Yeah. It would seem to me that that's something we should consider. I know there was a discussion earlier about removing the full-time, and I strongly would resist that primarily for safety reasons. I mean,
Absolutely.
just having one person in the summertime to do all the things that we have to do, but I think Bruce, I know that Bruce would not have come to us with such a well laid out plan. He didn't feel that it was absolutely crucial to doing what was needed in maintenance, and that is the one thing we hear the most about is we need more people in maintenance to do what we need them to do around here. So I think we need to consider that extra $20-some thousand.
For one half-time.
For a one half-time season, is it season?
What it would be,
One full-time
he
seasonal?
would be pulling it out of capital, one of his current staff, and just moving it from capital out of veg control and moving them into operations, which is not budgeted for during the summer due to the fact that everything is done for
I thought he said that,
veg
but
control.
then- So that frees up capital for something else. Is that for how long are we talking?
Well, it would just be for the summer during the veg control, so whatever, whatever that salary was would be still in capital.
No, the salary would get moved over to operations if that's what they're
Okay.
working in, is operations.
But if it's a half-time person, then there would not be benefits associated with it?
No, it's a normal person, it's a normal full-time FTE we have now.
Full-time would be, yeah.
Yeah, so we're just moving them from capital, veg control into operations, which you don't fund during the summer.
Okay, I get it. So what you're essentially doing then
Yes.
is adding more capital
No, you'd be
to
reducing,
your budget.
no, the capital would, he's already budgeted for capital,
Got it.
so he would not be in capital during the summer.
So that's going to reduce the amount of capital that we are expending, but it is not reducing the dues for that capital.
Correct.
So what I'm
'Cause it would
saying is
go-
it frees up some capital money for,
It would go,
am I right, Jennifer? Am I headed in the right direction
not-
here? Just asking.
I mean, I think that Bruce still needs his whole crew in veg control. I think it's actually adding that
Adding a
half a
person.
time
no,
person.
That's not what he said.
it was pulling somebody out of capital, off
Could
veg
you-
control.
Okay, could you get this clarified for us to have a discussion about it? Because either way, if Bruce feels he needs it, maybe we need to hear the plea again to understand better what his needs are. And he was here, but he's gone. They keep up time. So, yeah, but I think we should consider it. I don't think he'd ask for it unless he felt it was crucial.
I support
Okay. Anything else? Hearing nothing?
Could I make a motion that we rise out of the committee of the whole and
Yes.
then make a motion to go into closed session?
Yes.
Will there be any voting at the,
No, they will not be voting.
thank you.
Before we adjourn into closed session, before you adjourn into closed session, may I just review the items, the action items, to be sure that
Yes, please.
I'm on the same page?
Okay. So,
Make a motion to rise up out of the committee of the whole and get a small discussion with staff, and then we'll make a motion.
Carol, before we do we also need to sign the resolution this evening
Yes, the resolution needs to be signed, please,
by the executive?
by the executive committee.
Thank you.
okay, and there's a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, and all in favor? Aye.
Who actually seconded that?
Okay. So, discussion, Steph.
Great, so we had just a few changes. And that was to add $2,000 into advertising income for the views, to add $2,600 into the main pool income, bringing it to $7,500 annually, and to add $40,000 into the hazardous tree budget, bringing that to $60,000 annually. And then the other action items I have listed are the salary information per Sarah's request, tasks of the golf front office, a detail of what an emergency preparedness proposal looks like and how much that costs, and the cost of the 6-month person for maintenance, detailing that out and how it affects
We also asked
capital.
for a specification on the golf FTEs.
Yes.
Carol?
I didn't know, did we ever discuss the whole housing piece? I think we said, but I don't, did we come to consensus that we're not going to increase the housing from 35 to 60,000?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's all I had, unless you had, I didn't have anything else. Oh, okay.
All right, we'll move into